Hi there, this is Alberto Savoia, that's me there, and welcome to Failure Bites Bite Back, a series of videos based on my book, The Right It, Why So Many Ideas Fail in the Market and How to Make Sure Yours Succeed. The material I get to present today, I want to give credit where credit is due, was originally developed and taught and practiced and refined both at Google and Stanford, and it is now an honor for me to be able to share it with all of you in video form as well as in book form. In today's episode, I'm going to talk about the law of market failure. We're going to learn what the law says, why I call it, consider it, and treat it as a law, and what the law of failure means for us. But before we proceed, it's important to understand what we mean by failure and success. So let's define them very clearly. I define failure as follows. We have a failure when the actual results from one of your investment or plans falls short of the expectations. Let's assume you're building 10,000 widgets, hoping to sell all of them, and you only sell 2. Well, that would be a failure. Or you open a restaurant and 3 months later the restaurant closes because you don't have enough customers. That would be a failure. By contrast, success is when the actual results are greater than or equal to your expectations. So you plan to sell 1,000 widgets and you sell 1,000 and then you have orders for another 1,000. Well, that's clearly a success. You open a restaurant and it's so popular that 2 years later you have to open another one to handle the traffic. That's another example of success. One of the important things to notice is that the word expectations. You cannot say that something was a success or a failure unless you're clear about your expectations. You have to know beforehand how you define success, and in future videos we'll talk about this in more detail. So with that definition out of the way, let's look at the law of market failure. Here it is. The law of market failure says the following: most new ideas will fail in the market even if competently executed. The law packs 2 punches. The first punch tells you that most new ideas will fail in the market, which is already a pretty hard punch to take because you know that going in that your odds are not very good, but you think, well, I will fail, but if I execute it well, if I do everything right, I will succeed. Sorry, that doesn't work. The second part of the law says, even if competently executed. So most new ideas will fail in the market, even if competently executed. It's kind of a hard law to take in, hard to accept, but it's a hard fact. But hard facts are actually good, right? Because they give us a solid foundation upon which to build. We know that we can depend on most new products failing, so we need to understand, accept that fact, and take it into account as we proceed. In order to beat failure, we have to understand failure and accept failure. Now, let me break it down a little bit, just in case you need to be convinced. When I say that most new ideas will fail in the market, what do I mean by most? Well, it turns out that that number is pretty high. It's about 80%. May vary a little bit from market to market, industry to industry, but typically, whenever new products are launched in the market, most of them fail, and by most I mean about, say, 80%. And the data from this comes to us from Nielsen research that every year looks at thousands of new product and new business launches, and every year publishes a report, and every year the results are pretty much the same. About 80% of them, give or take 1 or 2 percentage points, fail, disappoint, or are cancelled. What this means is that the actual results from that investment fell short of the expectations year after year. So there's plenty of data on this. But what do I mean when I say they fail even if competently executed? The second punch is even harder because it says that, look, you will fail and it doesn't matter how good you are at what you're doing. This means that if the product you're launching sits squarely in the area of your competence, in your excellence, whether you're an individual or a company, the law of failure will not excuse you. Let me give you an example. Let's pick a company that clearly knows how to execute. And I know it because I know it from the inside and the outside, and that's Google. You think that Google is successful, that all of its product or most of its product are successful. the reality is very different. A lot of Google products fail. In fact, if you search for Google failures online, you will find this page called the Google Graveyard, in which somebody took the trouble to list some of the most notable Google failures. So if a company like Google can fail with so many products, what chance do we have, right? And the odds, the interesting thing is that these are products that usually sit squarely into Google area of core competencies. These are internet-based ideas that Google is very good at. And of course, Google is not unique. Every large and successful company has its own version of the Google Graveyard. For example, the Microsoft Morgue. It's full of products that Microsoft launched and which failed in the market. And I'm not putting this to slide to make fun of Google and Microsoft, quite the opposite. Google and Microsoft put together are two of the most successful companies in the world. They've been around for a long time, especially Microsoft, which can only mean one thing. They know how to execute ideas. But the problem is that sometimes they execute well on the wrong idea. And it's important to understand that no market is above the law. So whether your idea is for a new book, a movie, a mobile app, or a new service business like a restaurant, or consumer products or toys, it does not matter. Most new products will fail in the market, even if competently executed. The next thing we need to discuss is, well, why do most new products fail in the market? Are there some mechanics behind it? As an engineer by training, I like to understand not just what the facts are, but what are the causes behind them. In my book, I go into this, the causes for failure at length, but here I want to just bring up two of the most important things that you need to understand about failure and success. The first one is what I call the success equation. For a new product to succeed in the market, a lot of things have to go right. I call each of these things a key success factor. So, for example, if your idea is a new restaurant, you have to make sure that you have a good menu, a good chef, the location must be good, your serving staff must be competent. A lot of things have to line up. And if everything lines up, your idea will be a success. On the other hand, all it takes is for one key success factor to go wrong, and the idea will fail. And since there are so many success factors, there are many, many more ways to fail than ways to succeed. If you're mathematically inclined, for n success factor, there is one way to succeed and 2 to the n minus 1 ways to fail. And that number, 2 to the n minus 1, can get pretty big very quickly. Success is hard because a lot of things must be done right, go right, or turn out right for a product, for a new idea to be successful. Having said that, not all success factors are equal, right? The quality of the food at the restaurant is arguably more important than the quality of, say, the table cloth, right? Or how quick the service is. All of these are important, but some factors are more important than others. And when I go and look at all of the failures, and I've done this for many years now, every time a new product fails, I kind of dig out and try to find out what happened here. It turns out that I'm able to put most new product failures into 3 categories with a convenient acronym of FLOP, which stands for failure due to launch, operations, or premise. So failure due to launch means that your product idea and the market somehow could not get together. You didn't launch it well. And I don't just mean the marketing. If marketing is not done well, your target market does not know about the product, but it could even be distribution. Maybe they know about the product, but they cannot get their hands on it. So that's what I call failure due to launch. Failure due to operation means that the product doesn't work, doesn't do what it's supposed to do, or doesn't do it well enough. So the restaurant, if the food is bad, well, that's a failure in operation, or your app crashes, or your car halts and catches on fire. Those are all examples of operations. And it could also be very poor quality. And the final one, P, stands for premise. And this is very different than the other two. It has nothing to do with whether people know about the product, can get their hand on the product, or if the product works. This means that people are simply not interested in your product, and it doesn't matter how well you launch it, how easily they can get their hands on it, or how well and how reliably it works. And when you go and look at products failure, as I have at hundreds, probably thousands of them by now, what you find out is that yes, some products fail because the marketing or distribution doesn't work. Some of them fail because they don't work as they are supposed to, or the quality is really bad. But most new products fail when you actually dig in because they're built upon the wrong premise. The market is simply not interested in the product, and they don't care how well you built it and how well you launch it or how much money you spent in marketing. The product will fail. Most new ideas fail because they are not the right it. What is the right it? Well, it's the title of my book, and I made it the title because it's a very important concept. The right it is an idea for a new product or service or business, which, if competently executed, will succeed in the market. Now, keep that in mind while I present the wrong it, and then we'll look at them in contrast. The wrong it, on the other hand, is an idea for a new product which, even if competently executed, will fail in the market. Let me give you some examples of the right it and the wrong it. So this example will help you internalize it, and then we'll go back to the definition. So let's pick McDonald's, a company that really knows how to execute burgers. Take the Big Mac, a big success for McDonald's. It's been going on for decades. Every year McDonald's tries to introduce new sandwich, new burger combinations, and every year they kind of run into the same problem. The new product, the new idea for a sandwich, most of them are not the right it. They do not succeed. It doesn't have to do anything with their competence or ability to execute. People are just not interested in that particular sandwich. Same thing with Coca-Cola. Classic Coca-Cola, the right it, a huge success. When they try to change the formula, even though they spent tens of millions in marketing and promotion, New Coke was a failure. Clearly the wrong it. The movie Star Wars, everybody knows about it. Millions have seen it. It spawned countless sequels. What about Howard the Duck? What do I bring Howard the Duck? What's in common between these two movies? Well, what they have in common is George Lucas. Howard the Duck is the movie that George Lucas wrote and directed after Star Wars. Now, by all accounts, maybe somebody thought that Howard the Duck would succeed. After all, people like ducks, right? Donald Ducks, Daffy Ducks, Duck à l'Orange, and it has George Lucas, and yet they launched it, and clearly the movie didn't work very well. The interesting thing is that it's not a matter that George Lucas doesn't know how to write a script and how to direct and film a movie. So it's not a matter of competent execution or competent people. It's just they picked on the wrong idea. Most of you are probably subscribing to Gmail, clearly a product that is the right it. What about Google Wave? First of all, what is Google Wave? About 5 years ago, some engineers at Google came up with a new metaphor or something better than email for communicating. They call it Google Wave, and the company spent $20 million in 2 years to develop this product. There was a lot of buzz around it, and then they launched it, and to make a long story short, it didn't work out very well, so they shut it off soon afterwards. Once again, it's not because it didn't have the right engineers on it, the right company to advertise it, clearly not because people didn't know about it, because there was a huge amount of buzz about it. It was just that they built the wrong it. Ford Mustang, a huge success. Ford Edsel, not so much. So what all of these examples have in common is that they're essentially the same company, the same people, just executing well, but just on different ideas. Some of them were the right it, some of them were the wrong it. So if you have the right it, you combine it with competent execution, you're likely to succeed. Can I guarantee you success? No, because you never know. Things can come out from left field that you don't expect. But much more often than not, you're likely to be successful. On the other hand, if you have an idea that is the wrong it, you combine it with competent execution, you are guaranteed failure. If an idea is the wrong it, if the premise is wrong, it doesn't matter how much marketing effort, how much quality you build into it, it will fail in the market. All right? So that's a very important thing. The worst thing you could do is to put competent execution, putting all your money, time, effort, and dollars in the wrong idea, because competent execution does not guarantee success. It's competent execution coupled with the right it. And that is why a few years ago I came up with this very important phrase, which I'm thinking one of these days I will tattoo on my body. And you don't have to tattoo it, but it's good if you can get it imprinted into your mind. Make sure you're building the right it before you build it right. And in here, it refers to a new product, a new business, a new service, basically anything new that you're planning to do. Make sure that you're headed in the right direction before you do it. Because all of my research shows that most failures are not due to our inability to build it right. They're due to the fact that we build it right, but we happen to have built the wrong it. Which brings us to the next question, a very important question. Well, how can I know if a new product idea is the right it until I actually build it? Well, that's going to be the subject of the next video. In the meantime, I hope you've enjoyed this presentation, that you've learned a bit more about the law of failure and what it means to have the right it. And if you'd like to learn more, please come back for more videos. Follow me on social media at Prototyping at Twitter, and I will alert you when the new videos are out. And of course, if you buy the book, I go into all of these ideas in great detail, and it would make me very happy if you buy the book. And I think it will make you smarter and savvier, and it will give you the ammunition to bite back against the law of failure. This is Alberto Savoia. Thank you for watching. Hope to see you back soon.